Welcome, fellow seekers of the unknown, to Paranormal M. Subscribe and enable notifications to join us in exploring the enigmas that lie beyond. Get ready for a captivating adventure into the mysterious. Sleepless Journey. Real story. In the quiet town where I lived, something peculiar started to unfold. A relentless bout of sleeplessness that defied all reason. It began innocently enough, with a few nights of restlessness and an ever-present feeling of unease. But as time wore on, an eerie presence seemed to seep into my waking hours, infusing the air with an unsettling energy. The once familiar glow of the moon lost its soothing touch, casting an ominous light upon the night. Sleepless nights turned into harrowing ordeals, plagued by an unyielding inability to find solace in slumber. The stillness of the night air felt heavy, as if unseen eyes were silently watching my every move. With each passing night, reality began to blur with the surreal. Whispers echoed through the recesses of my mind, ethereal voices that beckoned from realms beyond human understanding. Shadows danced with an uncanny life, their eerie movements conjuring visions of nameless terrors that sent shivers down my spine. Driven by desperation, I sought guidance from those versed in the mystical and the unknown. Through whispered rumors and clandestine networks, I came upon an enigmatic figure, a witch who claimed knowledge of the hidden forces that ensnared me. Within the witch's house, a dimly lit room adorned with peculiar objects, an air of ancient wisdom hung in the air. The energy crackled, pregnant with a mysterious power, as the witch, draped in a cloak, led me through ancient rituals and incantations. In the chamber adorned with symbols that seemed to writhe upon the walls, the witch invoked forces beyond mortal comprehension. Candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to possess an eerie sentience. Whispers filled the air, carrying the weight of forgotten knowledge and ancient secrets. As the witch chanted in an unfamiliar tongue, a rift in reality materialized before me. A door to the unseen, a portal bridging our world with the realms shrouded in mystery. A presence, simultaneously awe-inspiring and disconcerting, emanated from the depths of that void, its ethereal touch brushing against the edges of my consciousness. Summoning my resolve, I resisted the entity's mesmerizing allure, bolstered by determination to reclaim my restless nights. The witch's incantations grew in strength, merging with my own inner fortitude to form a barrier against the insidious presence that sought to consume me. In a burst of ethereal light, the entity recoiled, its power waning against the strength of my will. The void closed, severing the connection to those unseen realms, and I found myself standing on the precipice of a transformed existence. Through sleepless nights persisted, a newfound awareness of the otherworldly allowed me to navigate the darkness with an unwavering spirit. Now I walk the delicate line between the ordinary and the supernatural, forever touched by the lingering presence of that otherworldly encounter. Sleepless nights continue, haunted by the echoes of that ethereal force. But I'm no longer its captive. I am the guardian of my own fragile reality, forever mindful of the uncharted depths that lie beyond the realm of mortal slumber. The Chupacabra. What do you think of this? The story behind the Chupacabra phenomenon is a fascinating tale that emerged in the late 20th century, specifically in Puerto Rico. The term Chupacabra translates to goat sucker in Spanish, and it refers to a creature that allegedly attacks and kills livestock, particularly goats, by draining their blood. The chupacabra legend began in the early 1990s when reports of mysterious animal attacks started circulating in Puerto Rico. Farmers and residents discovered their livestock dead with puncture marks on their bodies and completely drained of blood. The media picked up on these accounts, and soon the story spread throughout the island and beyond. Descriptions of the chupacabra varied, but a common depiction emerged as a creature roughly the size of a small bear or large dog, with reptilian-like skin, spines or quills on its back, red glowing eyes, fangs, and a long tongue. Some witnesses claimed it could hop or fly short distances as well. As the reports gained attention, the chupacabra phenomenon expanded beyond Puerto Rico. Similar sightings and livestock killings were reported in other Latin American countries such as Mexico, Chile, and Argentina, as well as in parts of the United States, primarily in the southwestern states like Texas and New Mexico. The chupacabra became a source of intrigue and fear, with some people even speculating that it was an extraterrestrial or a government experiment gone wrong. Various theories and urban legends were born, fueling the mystery surrounding this creature. In reality, the chupacabra sightings can be attributed to a combination of factors. The original reports in Puerto Rico were likely influenced by the widespread belief in supernatural creatures and legends in the region. As the story spread, it is possible that some cases of animal attacks, possibly by feral dogs or other predators, were misinterpreted or embellished to fit the chupacabra narrative. The chupacabra gained more attention and notoriety due to media coverage, which led to an increase in reported sightings. In some cases, the creature found and identified as chupacabras turned out to be known animals with mange or other diseases that altered their appearance. While the chupacabra phenomenon has persisted and become a part of popular culture, skepticism remains regarding its existence as a distinct creature. Many experts and scientists attribute the reported sightings to a combination of misidentification, folklore, and urban legends. The story behind the chupacabra phenomena is a captivating mix of folklore, media attention, and sensationalism. It originated in Puerto Rico in the early 1990s, but it's sort of expanded into other countries, causing intrigue and fear among the public. While the legend of the chupacabra continues to captivate people's imaginations, the evidence supporting its existence as a unique creature remains elusive. Need help and advice on this situation. So recently, my wife and I just felt off about our home. I've recently had a nightmare where something is trying to drag me out of bed, and it feels evil. My wife and I have heard things at night a while ago, and it normally was 3 things around 3 a.m. My mother-in-law came over to hang out with my wife today while I was at work. I'll just start off by saying that she's sensitive to energies related to spirits and believes in the afterlife. While she was here, she was saying that she was picking up on the bad energy and that it was unfriendly. She was in the laundry room and felt it try to pass through her, but told it to leave her alone. Before I got home, she saged our home and told it to leave us alone politely, asking it to show itself to her tonight in her dream, or for her grandmother to tell her. Her late grandmother is someone that comes to her in her dreams or sends messages. Just probably an hour before I'm posting this, the dog we're watching for a bit just ran out of our room barking and growling, almost like he was trying to chase something out of our room. He's not a big dog, he's a dachshund, but he stopped right before the kitchen and growled a little more before coming back to the bedroom. I think a cat haunts my house. I just got off the phone with one of my friends, who was pretty into paranormal stuff, and after talking to him, I decided to post onto here. I don't really know when the first experience happened. I believe I was anywhere from 8 to 11. I was about to go to sleep around 2 a.m. and I felt a cat walk up to my bed and lay down around my pelvis. I took my hand and put it where I thought I felt the cat, and there was an indentation where a cat had been laying, and it was warm, unlike the rest of my bed at the time. About a year later, we found a small kitten inside my brother's engine. The cat couldn't have been older than a few weeks old, and we live in the middle of nowhere with a lot of snakes, so I don't know how the cat would have gotten there without getting killed. The cat died only a few weeks later due to my dog having a disliking for new cats. After probably 2 years of not hearing anything, I heard what sounded like a cat walking down the stairs. I ended up hearing this sound for a good 2 to 3 month period. It was only when somebody was upstairs, like it would see someone was up there, and walked after them about 2 minutes in between my parents going upstairs. Then the cat would go. Most recently, I hear what sounded like somebody walking down the house when I was home alone, and I decided to do a house sweep to make sure no one was inside, and no one was. When I made it back to my room, I decided to lock my door just to be safe, and within 5 minutes, I started hearing scratching at my door, like down at the bottom of my door where a cat would be. Personally, I think my house is haunted by a cat, but I would love to hear y'all's takes. How I know for certain reality isn't what it seems, the most surreal moment of my life. Just over 10 years ago, 2 friends and I were sitting in a KFC. We were all on the booth side of the tables in a row. I was on the far left typing on my BlackBerry. I finished typing and I look to my right and I get a huge jolt of adrenaline. My body goes into fight or flight because I know I've seen this exact image in a dream before. Do you know how when you wake from a dream, you remember it all in intricate detail, but after an hour, all you can remember is vague images that are familiar, but you couldn't really describe what was happening in it to someone anymore? Well, when I looked up, it unlocked the dream memories, because I know I had this dream exact months previously. But it gets stranger. In my dream, I remember when I turned my head to the left, a woman was coming around the corner holding a child's hand. So I turn my head to the left, and a woman is coming around the corner holding a child's hand. So I stood up and said to my friends frantically, I've dreamt this exact moment before. And they said nothing. Neither of them even acknowledged what I was saying, despite how much I was trying to make them listen. I get it, because if someone said this to me, I'd recommend that they go to the hospital. But this really did happen. They finished their food and we got back in the car and got on with our day. The whole time I was having an existential crisis in silence. This wasn't déjà vu. I've had déjà vu a million times before. But maybe déjà vu is a very mild version of this. I know for certain that consciousness extends beyond our physical bodies, in the here and now. Unfortunately, I can't prove it. I can only tell you what happened to me. But if anyone else has had experiences like this, I really would like to hear about them. I'm a nurse at a palliative care unit in an old hospital. I'm a nurse at a care unit in an old hospital. If you're a nurse at one of these units like me, or know a nurse, please read or listen until the end. I could use your help. Throughout my years working at this hospital, I've seen a lot, especially being in a palliative care unit. You see a lot of things other people wish they wouldn't. For some of us, at some point, we just have to accept things as they are. The unit I work in has 9 beds in 9 different bedrooms, all spread along a long corridor. At the start of the corridor is the lift, and coming out of it, you'd find the cleaning room on your right, where we keep all the cleaning equipment and products, and the nurse's room on your left, along with the entrance through the stairs. Because of the building and the patient's safety, so we can access the other floors easily if in need, the administration forbade us from locking the stairs doors. This isn't ideal because some of our patients, in their delusions, can go across our room's door unnoticed and will be a danger to themselves. So we always keep the door closed by tying a bedsheet around the door handle to keep them together. This is important so you know why what comes next started out so strange. The nurse's room is where we'll spend most of the night shifts doing all kinds of activities, including resting and actually sleeping. Usually late at night, my routine would include checking on all of our patients, checking on all the doors and windows to make sure that they're all locked properly, checking on the doors to get to the stairs, and then spend most of the night checking patient files. This night in particular, I had finished with my rounds, and I was checking on all the cameras when my nursing auxiliary came into the nurse's room. She asked me if anything else was needed, or if she was okay to sleep for a while. I told her she was fine, just to go to sleep. So she took her shoes off, laid down with her back to the room, and me facing the wall, and went to sleep. I was reading a new patient's file who was coming into our unit soon, to know what to expect and how to behave around him, when I started hearing footsteps walking up and down the unit's corridor. At first, I ignored them, thinking I was just tired and that my ears were playing tricks on me. It wouldn't be the first time. As they persisted, though, I started wondering what was going on. I took another look at the cameras, but each and every one of the bedroom and corridors sort of feed seamlessly and completely normal. I believe they meant to write feels and seemed completely normal. Sorry, a lot of these stories are talk to text, so I don't really get very many clues as I'm reading these stories as to how to read them. I just try my best. On with the story. The steps, though, kept coming all the way into the nurse's room, stopping about 2 steps away from showing at my door, then turning around and walking back all the way to the opposite end of the corridor. I waited to see if anything changed, but when it didn't, I stood up to go check. That's when one of our patients, the one in room number 7, started calling us frantically. My auxiliary nurse was still asleep, so I walked carefully out of the room, peeked out of the room and looked around. There was nothing there, and the footsteps had stopped, so I rushed to the patient's room. When I got there, he was shouting frantically, huddling against the bed's headboard with what seemed like renewed energy, shouting at me to tell the man in the top hat sitting in the chair in the room to go away and leave him be. Usually with patients like these in this state of stress, we just go along with their delusions to calm them down. If there are nurses watching, which I hope there are, you'll know what I mean. In this case, with him screaming in the room, I turned toward the chair and started talking to this imaginary man in a top hat, telling him that he needed to go, that the visiting hours were done, and that he needed to leave right now or we'd have to call security. After this, the patient calmed down, thanked me for sending the man away, and lay back down to rest. I went back to the nurse's room and back to studying the new patient. As I walked back in, my heart stopped. All I felt was panic gripping my heart inside of me. As I stood there not knowing what to do and looking at the surveillance cameras, there was a big shadow standing in the middle of the frame of the camera recording, at the end of the corridor, right in front of the bedroom I had just been in. I took one step back and leaned backward to check if I could see anything there. There was nothing. I gave the cameras another quick glance, and the shadow was still there, standing terrifyingly still in front of this patient's bedroom door. This time, though, when I turned to look directly at the corridor again, this thing was there. For a moment, it felt like everything froze in place, and I just stood there, looking at it like a fool. Then, slowly, it turned towards me, a pair of strange dark red eyes showing. It stood like that for a bit, screeched at me, and flew into the patient's bedroom, slamming the door behind it. My auxiliary nurse jumped awake at the slam of the door and started frantically asking me what was going on. I was out of breath by now. I told her what I had just seen, what had just happened. She couldn't believe me. I asked her to come with me to the patient's bedroom, and she agreed, starting to become curious. We walked slowly through the corridor, passing every door carefully. I was afraid that anything would just come flying at us. When we got to the bedroom, this thing flew into that I pushed the door without going in to check for any kind of danger, and immediately felt a breath of freezing air hit me in the face. The air conditioner was on in every room and set to 23 degrees, so this was not normal. Nothing came flying at us like I was afraid would happen, but there, right in the patient's bed, there was this shadow. I could tell it was a man, tall and strong, with a top hat over his head. I asked my auxiliary nurse if she could see him, not expecting a no. However, that's what I got. She couldn't see anything standing there, and definitely not as clear as I could. Slowly, the shadow turned towards me again. This time, it didn't scream. This time, it slowly dissipated. Immediately, I calmed down. Not only could I not see it anymore, I also couldn't feel it. The sense of calm overcame me, and the patient seemed okay, so we left the room. We went back to the nurse's room. My colleague went back to sleep, and I didn't rest until I checked the rest of the unit to make sure everyone was safe. After that, I couldn't help but stare at the cameras every minute for the rest of the night. Eventually, our shift was over, and we'd basically become the shift with the most intense experience I ever had. The next day, when night came, and I did all my rounds, I went inside to room number 7 to check on that patient. When I came closer to him, I realized he had passed away. This was my first experience with the shadow man in the top hat, but it wasn't the last, and it's still ongoing. I'm the only one who can see him around the unit, which freaks everyone out. Every single time I see him, it's under the same circumstances. I walk into a patient's room, and there's his shadow at the foot of their bed. I wait for a little while until he turns to me and dissipates. 1 or 2 days later, the patient passes away. This is a real story, and it's something I have to live with almost every day now. I'm not sure if this thing is killing people or announcing their deaths, but if you're a nurse in a similar unit or know someone who is, please share this with them and comment what you know about it. I need to know what this is, how to deal with it, and if anyone else has experienced the same as me, even if it's a different looking entity. I can keep you updated on here if people are engaging and want to know more. Let me know if you have any updates, and I'll make sure to bring them. If you're dealing with something like this yourself, know that you're not the only one. Maybe this will help you feel less afraid. Stepdad's Ghost Haunting. When I was 16, 39 now, my stepdad died of lung cancer in the house that I lived in. It was a very sad process, as he didn't want to die, never accepted his fate while he was alive. Towards the end, he was so high on meds he didn't have any grasp on reality. The reason I mention that fact is I believe when he died, he didn't realize he was dead. Now the happenings after his passing. My mom took a second job, and I was home alone a lot. During this time, I would hang out in the basement most of my time, and I would hear footsteps walking from their room to the kitchen often, and would think my mom was, just home. I would head upstairs and nobody was there. But often cabinet doors would be open and the lights would be turned on that I knew were off. I had a very vivid dream where he was telling me about how much better he's feeling and how his hair is growing back, even on his feet. As I woke up from this dream, I was basically convulsing and making this very bizarre snorting noise. That's when I saw him walking out of my room. I had friends over for some drinking and card playing. I decided to go to sleep upstairs in my room, and 3 of my friends were sleeping in the basement. I was woken up by them in my room with them asking me, "How did you do that?" Totally confused, I had no idea what they were talking about. They told me the basement lights were flickering and a radio turned on with song lyrics playing with something along the lines of, "This is my house." They were convinced I was playing some elaborate prank. I wasn't. The footsteps and cabinet door instances would continue, and I became accustomed to hearing noises coming from their room where he died. Noises that sounded like someone going through their things or just moving around. The last time I ever experienced anything from him was the strangest experience of all. I was home alone again, and this time in the upstairs living room, which was right by their bedroom. The bedroom door was open and I was on the couch watching TV. I started to think that I heard something, so I muted the volume and listened. What I heard was very distinct and unmistakable breathing coming from the room. It was distressed and progressively getting louder. I yelled out, "Okay, I hear you. I know you're here. Please stop haunting me. If you want to communicate, visit me in my dreams." The breathing immediately stopped, and I just sunk as far into the couch as possible and tried to continue to watch TV. Now, my mom really didn't know how to deal with his death. This was her soulmate, and she was completely destroyed. She started seeing a guy that she worked with soon after. Probably needed comfort or something that I couldn't understand then. Whatever the case, he was over at the house spending time about a month after his death. Whenever he was over, I could feel my stepdad. The best way to describe it, I could just feel his energy and he wasn't happy. The night I heard the breathing and told him to communicate with me in my dreams, I had a dream that night about my mom and her new boyfriend. They were hugging each other and then my stepdad came storming out of their room chasing the guy out of the house. What I took away from that was that he didn't want this man near my mom. Come to find out, he was married and ended up being a ridiculous situation. Since that night, I told him to stop. I never experienced anything else in that house. My mother would see him where she worked often out of the corner of her eye, or she would smell him. One day she called me freaking out saying, I saw him. I turned the corner and he was there, standing in the aisle looking right at me. He still looked sick and very sad. She said he was a full-body apparition and was visible for about 5 seconds. Long enough for her to say, I see you. This was the last time her or I had contact. That might have been the final goodbye. He was a great man. Miss him dearly. Ask Reddit. Many houses I've lived in have been haunted. I have reason to believe it's because my sister and I are conduits for the supernatural. My father and his brother were using a Ouija board when we were children. After playing with it for a while, the two of us, still infants, started screaming. Since then, both my sister and I have seen things in our dreams before that happened in perfect detail. She faints and sees them. I just see them in my dreams. I'm also a lucid dreamer, so I can interact with it and I'm aware it's a dream. Last week, my lights started flickering in my new house. Been here a few months. Only had a few odd instances. Passed off as the wind, perhaps. Doors slowly closing without anyone nearby. Doors opening when locked and closed tightly. Having to close more doors than I open at night. But anyway, yesterday I let my dog out, as I do every morning. After he was out on his chain, I went back in. When I went to grab the door to close it, it slammed itself shut forcefully. That day, the flickering lights had been intense. I've not had anything else since yesterday except my light flickered a little bit, and the temperature dropped a few degrees. My cat is always trying to attack something that isn't there, but I think she's just a little bit schizo. Ask Reddit. I was 5 years old. My brother was 3. Family decided to take a day trip to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Dad is a Civil War enthusiast, and he was excited to see the spot that was called Devil's Den, where there had been apparently a high amount of soldiers killed in that battle, one of the bloodiest in the war. I remember it was August. It was hot and pretty humid that day. I remember walking with my parents up this hill when my parents were approached by this one guy dressed in full-fledged Union uniform, I guess you could call it. I think I remember wondering why he was dressed that way when it was so hot. I genuinely thought he was a tour guide because they make the tour guides dress that way, or did when I went then. I don't remember the conversation between him and my parents. I think I just shrugged it off as adult talk. We got up to the top of this hill, a rocky cliff, which is important to note later in the story, where he was pointing out stuff to my parents, but mostly my dad. There was only one way off and onto this hill, and that was the path that we just took. I remember starting to get bored when he pointed something out for my brother and for me to look at. I remember walking up to the edge and looking down, seeing nothing. When I turned around to tell him so, he wasn't there, at all, vanished. My parents, brother, and I walked all the way down the hill looking for him, but didn't see him. Some things I found out later from my dad when I was older. 1. He greeted my dad by his first name, which spooked him because he'd never seen the guy before in his life. 2. He told my dad he was from a town not far from Gettysburg, and pointed out various towns to him on that hill. Later found out all those towns were destroyed in the Civil War. 3. The park didn't have any tour guides wear uniforms because it was too hot that day. Dad said he even noticed the guy wasn't sweating. I'm a skeptic, but I can honestly say I can't explain this. This happened on vacation with my parents. Every summer we have a tradition of going up to Wisconsin and having a really chill short vacation. And this year we rented a VRBO. I don't know what that is. It was honestly a really nice place. I was also told that it was pretty old, but I'm not sure exactly how old. It happened the night before we left. I was laying in my bed, about to fall asleep, when I heard the doorknob turn and my door crack open. Thinking it was one of my parents, I said, "What the fuck?" But I didn't hear anyone respond. I thought maybe one of them was just checking on my door or something, so I didn't panic, even though I was weirded out. I mentioned that morning that somebody tried to open my door during the night, and my parents mentioned that they both heard the doorknob turn and the door open, and thought I was going to the bathroom or something. Now, I've had doors open on their own before. I remember when I was a kid, there was this one door in my grandparents' house that never latched properly and would open at unexpected times, and I was freaked out the very first few times that it happened. If this is what happened with the door in question, I wouldn't be making this post. In fact, that doorknob turned as if someone was struggling to get my door open. That's what freaked me out. I think my dad is possessed. For a bit of context, around 5 years ago, there was a night where my dad left for work in the morning and never returned home. We became increasingly worried when he wasn't answering his phone and called the police. Eventually, he was found, and it later came out that he was in a building that he works in that's known to be haunted for hours. Following this, I feel stupid for not picking up on the signs, but he was attending church and constantly reading prayers. I just thought that he had gotten more invested into religion. Particularly in recent months, I've noticed my dad to be acting increasingly more strange. He'll have delayed response times and move slowly, and sometimes just be confused. Around half an hour ago, I overheard him on the phone, talking to his mom, my grandmother, and he explained how no one understands that for the last 5 years he's been dealing with spirits, evil spirits like the devil, who insult him and call him names, and tell him to do things like kill himself. He stated that if something such as stupid as suicide was to happen, then it wasn't of his own doings, as he'd never do anything like that. He explained how the demons controlled him and caused him to do things like kicking his legs uncontrollably, which he isn't doing. In his room, on a cabinet next to his bed, he has a picture of Jesus. He says when he wakes up in the morning and looks at the picture, his stomach flattens and makes a growling noise. When he walks away, it inflates again. I find this particularly weird, but completely believe it. I asked my mom about the missing time I had as a kid. It happened when I was 6. She remembers waking up and seeing me next to the side of her bed. She said I was talking and saying nobody listened to me. Then I got into bed and asked her to leave her lamp and TV on before I went to sleep. She said that soon after is when I started to have explicit nightmares about aliens and monsters, as I put it, kidnapping me through my bedroom window. And when I started getting really deep into TV shows about the paranormal, she doesn't remember the lights, but she also doesn't remember me opening her door and walking in. From then on, for a little while, I would wake up in the middle of the night and go to her bedroom to ask to sleep with her, because I was that scared. I haven't been able to sleep with the lights off since then. Again, I don't remember any of this. My mom also said that shortly before the incident of lost time, I started seeing a shadow figure in the house. I called him Stephen, and for some reason I was really adamant that it was spelled with a PH and not a V. My mom thought it was just an imaginary friend. Then she saw the shadow of a man standing over me while I was sleeping, who then disappeared into thin air when she turned the lights on. 6 years ago, my mom found out that there was a family in the neighborhood, before they moved in, whose sons were drafted for the Vietnam War. Only one came home, Stephen. In 1978, he took his own life on the same day that I would be born 20 years later. I don't know if the two things are related, but that was the timeline of events that my mom helped me piece together. Still doesn't explain what happened completely, but at least someone remembers something. My mom said that she'd try to see if she could remember more and tell me if she did. Ask Reddit. Attended a school back in 2013 to 14, and it was so haunted I still don't believe it. Me and many other students, but also some of the teachers working there, saw things go flying in the air, heard footsteps, or sometimes touched by something that we couldn't see, and had various new and expensive equipment. Myself, I had an iPhone 5, and a fully spec'd late 2012 iMac at that time. Fail whenever the ghost, quote-unquote, entered the room. The various tech problems all disappeared as soon as I left the school and took my stuff back home with me, by the way. The iMac's still in use today by my uncle, and he experiences no issues with it to this date. So to my first serious experience at the school. One night I was alone with a girl at my student house. Everyone else was partying down at the school building, when suddenly we started hearing footsteps from the attic upstairs. It was a tiny room up there. There was only really enough space for storing some torn hiking equipment, like a few backpacks and such. After maybe half a minute or so, the footsteps started coming down the stairs from the attic. At this point, me and my best friend went dead silent, and we were both just staring towards the door that went to the attic. The footsteps came all the way down and went into the living room where we were sitting. At this point, the sound of the footsteps switched from sounding like someone walking around in big boots into what sounded more like somebody coming wet and barefoot out of the shower or a tub. When the sound got to the middle of the room, which was right in front of where me and this girl were sitting, it stopped. And for a few brief moments, there was nothing but dead silence. The girl and I just looked at each other for like 5 to 10 seconds before my eyes caught something going on behind the girl's back. We were sitting in a couch together, and behind her were these huge windows that went from the floor all the way up to the ceiling. They had some seriously huge blinds as well. And so I watched this pretty heavy lead thing that certain industrial blinds have be lifted all the way up from the floor to just above the middle of the window. There it kept floating in the air for about 5 seconds, before it was punched into the window with such force that I'm sure the window would have broke if it hadn't been for those thick blinds protecting it. The girl didn't see this as it happened from behind her back, but you can be sure that she heard the noise. In fact, she got so scared that she literally jumped into my lap screaming. That's the moment when I stopped trying to give possible natural explanations to everything paranormal. Who have we seen? So there is this long-time abandoned house in a park near mine. It's already almost fully demolished, only 3 walls remain, and the yard around. And me and some friends used to go there to explore, since it didn't belong to anyone. There was this particular time where me and my friend wanted to go there to see if it was good to shoot a short film. So we got up the hill and entered the yard. There was nobody, obviously, and that park is basically as abandoned as the house, and nobody goes there. Especially, after that fire that occurred that burnt everything, house included. Even though it's all rocks, so I don't really know how that could have burned. So as we entered the yard, we saw a large pile of rocks crumbled down inside the 3 walls. And my friend spotted an ancient sewing machine. It was like super heavy and rusty. It looked gold. For some reason, he wanted to bring it home, so I helped him take it. For all the time, though, I felt like a weird feeling all around, as if we were being watched. So as we took the sewing machine and turned around, I literally froze for a second. There was this lanky, pale woman standing in the middle of the yard. She appeared from nothing. We heard nothing, there was nothing, no one, and this woman pops up with her dog from air. She was really pale. I'd say her skin was completely white, and her dog was weird too. It was little, still no barking. It was like frozen, except it was trembling. So this woman said, "You're not supposed to be here." It seemed like a whisper, but it was much louder. It wasn't. So my friend was about to say something, but she said again, "This is private property." I swear I didn't see her blink once. She just was staring at us. So I said we were just looking around and we were going away. She stayed silent. So we just put away the sewing machine and got out of there. Before I opened the gate, she said, "Don't come back." Right after we got out, I peeked back in with my head and there was no one. So I got back in time, checked and heard no sound, saw no person. Like she vanished. Need help identifying what chased me. For some background, I, a 13-year-old female, have been able to see spirits my whole life. Unfortunately, this has drawn malicious entities to me and my family, and it's angered them whenever they haven't been able to fuck with me mentally because they know I can see them, which has caused me to be physically harmed by an entity in the past. But that's not what this post is about. Not only that, but my family lives in an area which used to be a World War II camp, where all the soldiers got killed in a blitz. And before that, it used to be an ancient burial site. So that does contribute to more than regular malicious activity. Tonight, around 11 p.m., I had a meltdown, and I ran out into the street incredibly angry and contemplating running into the road. But I heard something calling my name. It was a male voice, but it was very warped and obviously not human. I didn't turn around, and I ran, to which I heard whatever the being was chasing after me. When I eventually thought I'd lost the thing, I stopped for a couple of minutes to regain my breath. I started hearing what sounded like a cat meowing. However, there were no cats at all where I was. When I started to run again, I heard something chasing behind. When I stopped a third time to regain my breath, I was stupid enough to stop in a very shadowy area. And I heard what can only be described as the noise security cameras make when they turn, like a hissing, directly behind me, very loudly. I ran again, and this time I saw what looked like a completely black hand moving across the road directly in front of me. I very luckily got back home safe, however. I have no clue what the thing was, and I'd like to know if anyone has any idea of what thing it could have been, as I'd like to know. From what I can tell, it was attracted to the fact that I was very strongly upset and angry. I have PDA autism, which causes my emotions to be much more intense than a non-autistic person's. It was able to mimic voices and sounds, and could detach parts of its body. Ask Reddit. Happened a few years ago when me and my buddies went into the woods around 9 p.m. To get to the woods, you have to cross an old road that leads to a waterworks factory. This road separates the housing estate and the woods. Well, we were crossing this road and decided to enter through a different place that we'd never been to before. And we were only halfway down the road when something whistled at us. You may be thinking, it's probably just your mates, something like that. But this was different. We knew it was coming from the bushes almost instantly and legged it back towards the houses. Naturally, my fight or flight impulses kicked in and I ran, but in the complete opposite direction to my buddies. They ran back the way that they came. For some stupid reason, I ran straight towards the place the whistle came from. Realized I was going the wrong way, screamed, saw a silhouette of a man in the bush, and nearly fell over trying to turn around. We all regrouped. We made the ultimate collective decision to go back in. Nothing. No person, no second whistle, no speakers or anything. The silhouette I saw was gone. So we went into the trees, found an opening, like a little circle on the ground amongst the trees. We found a little teddy bear, as if it was deliberately placed and positioned where it was. Sitting on top of two twigs made to look like a cross, and 4 other sticks holding the bear in place. We took a picture, left, and never came back. I've since lost contact with my buddies, due to me starting college and them entering their final year of high school. But I tried going there through the day just last week. But all the paths have been blocked by fallen trees due to a recent red warning winds in the UK. Storm Arwen ruined a beautiful forest and buried a mystery that we never got to solve. Big hotel spook in England. Me and my boyfriend stayed at a pub hotel in the early summer back when we were long distance, and boyfriend was still living in a different region. He would regularly come up to see me, and we'd stay in different hotels in my area of England because I lived with my family. In this pub in the room we were staying in, we had been having a little bit of an argument. Before it could really escalate, I decided to go outside and sit in my car for 5 minutes. So I left the hotel and sat in my car, which was in the car park, a little after 9 p.m. When I returned to the room about 5 minutes later, my boyfriend told me that we were in trouble with the manager for being noisy. He told me that after he returned to the room, the manager had knocked on our room door and told him off for making a noise, saying that he had received 2 complaints about the noise that we had been making. Before we checked out the next morning, I was looking out of our room window and saw a young couple also leaving and wondered if it had been them who'd been annoying everybody and who had complained, perhaps. We went out for breakfast and things about the complaint didn't add up to me. For one, we weren't that loud and hadn't been arguing for even that long before I went out to my car. So how had 2 people managed to complain, and for that complaint to go straight to the manager, all in the space of 5 minutes that it took for me to walk to my car and back? I concluded to my boyfriend that the manager must have just heard us himself and made up that 2 different guests had complained. Fast forward to the afternoon of that day that we checked out, and we unexpectedly needed to book another night at this pub hotel due to the trains all being on strike, when boyfriend was due to travel back home. While I was at work, my boyfriend went back to the pub and checked us in for another night. He apologized for us being noisy the night before to the woman who was checking him in again. This woman said she hadn't known about us having made a noise. My boyfriend told her that the manager had knocked on her door last night and told him off. The woman member of the staff said that that was odd, because the only staff they have on at night was the chef and the young male bartender, and neither of them go upstairs, and that their manager was a woman with blonde hair, not a man. The female member of staff said that she doesn't know who this man was. None of the staff do, but that other guests have also told her the same, that a man had knocked on their door complaining about the noise, implying to be the manager. Well, the man my boyfriend had spoken to was in his 60s, with gelled back salt and pepper hair, and he was really freaking mean. My boyfriend recalled to me later that when he apologized, this man just glared at him and didn't make a move to leave, so my boyfriend just awkwardly shut the door on him. My boyfriend asked who else had stayed there, but was told that us and the other young couple I saw leaving were the only guests that previous night. This left us questioning who on earth the man who knocked on the door was pretending to be the manager. Who was that? So that night we were feeling quite creeped out. We were in a different room that was just opposite the one that we'd previously stayed in. Anyway, eventually we forgot about it and were having a bit of a laugh when a really hard knock on our room door rang out. My heart sank, and I was telling my boyfriend not to answer because it's the man again. He, of course, answered anyway. The door was about 2 to 3 feet from the bed that we were on. He opened the door, and there wasn't anybody there or in the corridor, which we were at the very end of. It was a long, straight, creaky corridor. Well, we were terrified by now. The next day, my boyfriend emailed the pub explaining the situation and saying that we were concerned that perhaps a weird stranger was knocking on doors in their hotel. We gave them the exact times of both incidents and asked them to check on their CCTV cameras, one of which was right next to both of the rooms that we'd stayed in. The manager replied to his email with this. It's a screenshot of the email my boyfriend received from the pub. But since I can't attach images, I have transcribed the email. It goes as follows. Dear Mr. So-and-so, following your recent complaint about another guest knocking at your door late at night, we reviewed our CCTV footage from 8/6/23 and 9/6/23. At the started times these incidents took place, stated times. On the 6th, at exactly 21:05 p.m., CCTV footage showed a man knocking and having a brief conversation with the guest in the room, after which the man turned, left, and walked down the corridor. However, he was not picked up on any CCTV footage leaving the premises or walking further down the corridor. Following this, we've gone over security points of the building and made sure all entrances are secured to prevent anything like this from happening again. On 09/06/23, however, we did not pick up anything unusual happening on our cameras at the stated time of the incident. We hope these incidents didn't affect your stay at such and such pub, and we apologize profusely for any stress this may have caused. Just know we have taken all measures to resolve this. Kind regards, manager such and such pub. This email to us made us feel validated that we didn't imagine our experiences, especially to have it confirmed by the manager herself via CCTV. We did ask to see the CCTV ourselves, but our further emails were ignored, unfortunately. This pub was taken over by a pub chain company, and they're very strict with their staff about being anti-ghost stories and only focusing on high-quality customer service, according to a former member of staff who I by chance managed to speak to. This member of staff told me some crazy things about the pub. My late dad visited me, I think. My dad died in 2014. Complications from pneumonia. While he wasn't a good dad, he did take me seriously whenever I said I didn't feel good. Well, I'm absolutely miserable right now with a cold. I've been taking cold meds, and last night I took the nighttime one, you know? So this could be a dream. I often wake up whenever my bedroom door opens. It squeaks loudly, and I refuse to lubricate it. Anyways, I hear my door open, and I see a man come to my side. He feels my forehead and softly murmurs that I have a fever. With a little bit of a light, I can see my late dad. I watch him as he goes to the other side of my bed and starts removing things from it. He tells me that he's going to lay down next to me until I feel better. I just nod as I start to close my eyes sleepily. My older son opens my door, and just as he enters, my dad disappears, and I fully wake up for a minute. My door is still closed. My son isn't there, and my things on the other side of my bed isn't where I left them last night. There's a small space cleared out. I'm still having that drowsy feeling, still feeling miserable but also confused. I felt my late dad's touch on my face. I heard his voice and I saw him. The thing is, I don't believe in ghosts. Demons, yes, but not ghosts. I don't think I was dreaming because it felt so real, but at the same time, I must have. This is the first time I've seen something like this. But shortly after he died, I kept having vivid dreams of him every night, which I absolutely hated. Insights on a past experience. Back in the summer of 2016, I was living with my best friend and his family, as my family moved down south and eventually to California. I live in Connecticut, so it was a bit of a hike. I got a job that was a few miles away and bought a bike to go to and from it. My best friend was also in the same boat, and for a bit, that was our mode of transportation. We ended up working at the same place as well, so payday was on the same day for both of us. Well, one Thursday night we got paid, and we were taking a ride over to the gas station a few miles away to go get cigarettes as everything nearby was closed. The roads were completely empty, no cars. It was about 1:30 to 2 a.m., give or take. There was a very dark section of the road coming up in about 1/8 of a mile or so, where there were no street lamps and no lights from houses. Looking ahead, I was confused as I caught a glimpse of what seemed to be a radiant, very bright white flourish across the street of the sidewalk, almost leaving streaks of white behind it as it moved. It was not luminescent, as it didn't light up the surrounding area to what I could see. It was dark. I should have been able to notice it had it lit up the area. I was very confused at this point because I know what a flashlight looks like. That certainly wasn't one of those, and there's no cars or bikes riding around with any headlights or lamps. We continue down the road, and one side of the street on the sidewalk, there's a very old couple, wearing light colors, walking with their arms interlocked. Neither of them acknowledged our presence. They were walking so slow but looked so content. On the other side, trailing them, was a man, ahead of where I saw the light. He was dressed in a pure white outfit with shoes to match. No hair, not even stubble or shadow anywhere, no eyebrows, no facial expression besides a seriousness I've never seen on anyone before. He was on the tall side, with an average build. As we approached, I could see him looking through my friend to me. He grilled me the entire time as we were going by, and he turned his head to keep his stare on me even as we rode by. We go just a little further, and I turned around to take another look, and there's nothing, all three gone. I asked my friend like 2 minutes later if he saw any of that, to which he has no idea what I'm talking about, apparently. We go a little further, and I ask him to stop for a second, and I explained everything that I just saw. He rode with his head up the entire time and didn't see anything, saw absolutely nothing. I know I didn't hallucinate, and I was completely sober. I've brought the story up to multiple people, and nobody can provide me with an answer as to what I witnessed. I still think about it regularly, but I have no insight whatsoever. Shower prank. I'm a strong believer that if you acknowledge something, it gets stronger. This happened to me months ago, and I just want to put it out into the world in hopes that it takes away the temptation to bring this up to my fiancé all the time. One evening after work, I went to take a shower. I will admit that I had not slept the night before, so I was incredibly tired. I had my music as loud as it would go on my phone so I could hear it over the rushing water. About midway through, my music volume lowered to silent. I turned around to open the curtain to find out why my fiancé pulled back the curtain a little bit, stuck his head in the shower, and grinned at me. I looked at him with confusion, and he popped his head back out before turning the light off and closing the bathroom door. To say I was furious was an understatement. I really don't like certain kinds of pranks. Call me lame if you want. And one involving wet and slippery darkness just hit me hard with how tired I was. I immediately stepped out of the shower, flipped the light switch back on. The switch is right between the shower and the door. There's only about a foot between the two as they share a wall. That was in parentheses. And stormed out of the bathroom without even getting a towel. I found my fiancé sitting in his computer with his headset on and absolutely laid into him. He had this confused and panicked expression as I asked why he would think that was funny, telling him to never do that again. He asked me to explain what he did wrong, which made me angrier. But when he said that he had been playing since before I even went in the shower, I actually believed him. To begin with, he hates pranks even more than I do. We've been together for 6 years, and he's never so much as jumped out from a corner to startle me. I've never seen him mess with anyone else either. He's not the type of person that would even think to do something like that. But I was so tired that none of that sank in before I lost it on him. Along with simply not being the type, the setup of the apartment would have made it impossible for him to get back to the office without me hearing him. Between the bathroom and the office, there's a noisy metal baby gate. The living room, then the kitchen, and another noisy metal baby gate in the office doorway. I would have also heard his footsteps on the wooden floors if he were moving as quickly as he would have had needed to. I've thought about it over and over and over. It's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me, and I want to write it off as me being sleep deprived. But I had to turn my music back up. I had to flip the light switch back on. I had to open the bathroom door to get out. We leave it open when the shower's going because it's just the two of us, and the bathroom has poor ventilation for steam. I made him check the apartment for anyone else. Even though I know what he looks like and the face was him, I asked him to stay in the bathroom with me until I washed the conditioner out of my hair. I think about this every time that I shower now. We've had some random things happen before that. Stuff moving into places that we know we didn't put it. Sounds we could rationalize forever. The motion sensor triggering on the cameras over nothing. But nothing nowhere near that level before then. I don't know what I'm looking for here other than a moment to just wring out my brain. But if anyone has ever had any similar experiences, this misery would welcome some company. And we at Paranormal M welcome your stories. So that's the end of them for tonight, and as usual, catch you guys tomorrow. Sweet dreams. See ya. Greetings, believers in the extraordinary. Here at Paranormal M, we bring you tales that challenge reality itself. Don't miss out. Subscribe and turn on notifications to journey into the uncharted. Enjoy the intrigue. Something mimicked my boyfriend's voice. I'm moving in with my boyfriend, and he purchased an old house. Apparently, at some point, a Hell's Angel was killed there. He used to own the house. Anyways, I used to have nightmares of a man choking me when I slept there. Like a super angry man trying to kill me, but it felt so real I could feel the hair on his arms as I tried to pull him off of me. Anyways, I did put holy water and other items upstairs. The bottom part of the house is just storage and a workshop. I was home alone listening to music with only one earphone in. I was listening to When You Were Young by the Killers. Anyways, you have to just go outside down some stairs to get to the door to the downstairs. As I was about to open the door, I heard clear as day the voice of what sounded like my boyfriend singing to that specific part of the song that was playing. Different tone and pitch, so it wasn't like the chorus. I thought he had gotten home, but when I entered the room, no one was there. I walked out to the driveway to see if maybe he was there, and nothing. When he got home, I told him about it, and he said the same thing has happened to him. Interesting. Apparently, I attract stuff, even without seeing them. For background, I'm a 24-year-old female, and I live in a country of Southeast Asia. My memories are not the best from my childhood, so apologies for lack of details in some of them. My mother's side of the family apparently has history with delving into unexplained stuff, and the women in the family all possess a certain amount of a third eye. And according to monks and priests alike, I have a certain aura that attracts stuff. When I was roughly 5 to 6 years old, my grandfather passed away. and we had a funeral, a cremation, and all that. But while all this is going on, I remember still talking to my grandfather, asking him why there was two of him, and why one of him is sleeping. This story is backed up by my family, mentioning that I was always chatting and playing with something that only I could see during this period of time, for 7 days. Soon after, my parents then brought me to a Chinese temple and to church on different days to close my third eye, as they say. According to family recounts and my own blurry memories, I had imaginary friends, normal kid stuff, except I would call them angels, without ever being taught that word before. What creeps them out, the way that I would talk to them about topics like life and death, things not common for kids below 5. Soon after, I also remember vaguely of seeing the infamous headless ghost in the middle of the crowd. It was the body of a middle-aged man, and above his neck was nothing. No blood or opening. Instead, a smooth, covered neck. But before I could say anything, my mom, who was holding my hand, pulled me away. After my third eye is closed, with multiple attempts, I grew up to be a fairly normal person in that matter. Except, I start to realize I can sense the presence of things I can't see. My high school is right across the street of a preserved forest, and being teenagers, me and some friends used to like going into the forest and having a little hike, heading to our secret spot that has a little pond. From one of the entrances to the forest, that's big next to a big lake, going there is like there's a fork in a path and a huge tree in the middle. One day, me and my friends had some hours to kill before extracurricular stuff and decided to go into that forest like usual. One of my friends have the third eye, and we're both aware of each other's weird powers. As we walk in and face the tree, my friend stops dead in her tracks, while I myself got a terrible gut feeling. We both glanced at each other and start to divert the rest of our group back to school. We both tried to act normal as the thing followed us till the school gate and stopped outside of it. It was a Japanese army man, and he was not friendly. My high school had some other supernatural stories, but that's a different post to come. Around a few months later, we're in the middle of exams, and it was also the Hungry Ghost Month. One night, I went to bed late, after a study session, and I was just drifting off when I felt someone or something was tickling my feet. I got very annoyed sitting up and thinking my siblings that I share the room with was playing a prank. Instead, I was met with a sleeping sibling and nothing more. Then a weird tickling feeling on my foot started again, and I end up sensing a kid in the room. I told it to leave and to disturb somebody else, and abruptly I stopped sensing it. Years later, I give birth to a healthy boy, and this happened when he was around 4 years old. One day, the babysitters dropped him off at my workplace, as we had plans to bring him out for dinner that night. For context, due to my long and irregular working hours, my son stays with the babysitters full time. I'm a single mom. When he arrived at my workspace, he sat at the sofa, and I tend to customers while he plays with his toys. I start to notice that he seems to be interacting with something, and was staring at a corner quite intently. And when I asked him, he was pointing to the corner and said, "Which?" I've never taught him that word myself. And thinking he picked it up from the babysitters, I just brushed it off. But a gut feeling was growing. An hour later, my friends and my fiancé arrived, and one of them, pretty tipsy. She had some wine at home, but started mumbling about a scary lady that's following her and her boyfriend. My friend, who has a third eye, confirmed that there is indeed something scary in our presence. Before he could say where, my son pointed and said the word "witch" again, and my friend stared at my son, shocked. The scary witch, in quotes, was threatening for everyone's lives, according to my tipsy friend. And in the end, the rest of us drove to a nearby mosque, where my fiancé, who is Muslim, started reciting prayers as we huddled together at the steps of the entrance to the mosque. After a long prayer, the scary witch finally disappeared, and my son stopped saying the word as well. Apparently, I attract stuff even without seeing them. Part 2. It all started with rumors from seniors of the corner building being most haunted building with multiple sightings, along with people going missing when hiking at the forest across the school. I hear this all during my first year then. Soon the rumors intensified to night shift security guards seeing weird apparitions and hearing disturbing noises at open-air parking lots. A guard saw a white lady right outside one of the ground floor classrooms at the very corner of another building. Take note. At the parking lot, and prayed for his life as he feigned ignorance. Another guard says he saw a weird flying creature on the roof of one of the school buildings. We never saw him again after he quit that next day. At this point, some of the students are already also saying that they see or hear things in the corner building and the toilets near the parking lot. Creepy hands and voices from things that aren't there. During my second year, everything escalated and creeped out the whole school. The students are split into morning and afternoon sessions, by school year to lack of space. For first and second years, we got the afternoon classes, while our extracurriculums are in the morning. That day was just another typical boring afternoon as I was dozing off in class at the second floor. Suddenly, 2 to 3 screams can be heard from the downstairs classroom, and everyone was stunned, unsure what happened. My seat was at the front row in the middle of the class, and I was about to turn and look around when an eerie chill went down my spine and I freeze. The screams continued. We start to notice the amount of noises from downstairs as well. After around 15 minutes, the screaming stops. Soon after class, my friends from the classrooms below told me what happened. 2 girls in one class and 1 girl from the class next door suddenly stood up screaming and just being super hysterical. No one could stop them as they pushed everyone away. The ustazas and ustaz, Islamic teachers, rushed to the classes and started reciting prayers as the students continued to panic. It took them a while to finally get the girls to calm down. They all looked confused. One of my classmates, with the third eye, also mentioned she saw a lady with a very pale face and in a red dress pass by and stop at the back door of our class and bend inwards as if peeking at us all. Nonetheless, that explained the chill I felt. She added that the way she bent was inhuman. Remember the night shift guard and his encounter at the parking lot? The classrooms are both right next to that lot. Since then, the classes are converted into computer classrooms that are only open at certain times, mind you. Next are most recent accounts from friends. The next incident happened on my 3rd year. I was switched to the morning session this year. Some juniors told me the story that happened on a stormy afternoon. Class was going on as usual when a boy in the ground floor classroom suddenly stood up rigid and for a few seconds just stared blankly ahead. The teacher thought it was a prank or he needed to go to the toilet, when suddenly he ran out of the classroom and straight into a parking lot in the storm. He stood right in the middle of it, looking at the sky blankly. Several male teachers tried to move him away, but no matter how hard they tried, he wouldn't budge an inch. Soon after, they started to recite prayers while trying to move him, and he finally snapped out of it and fell unconscious. He was sent home shortly to rest. Another incident was also in the afternoon. Some of us stayed behind to attend Chinese classes, since it got cut out of the regular timetable for some reasons. We usually use the empty classrooms on the top floors when the morning classes are not in school. as afternoon sessions only require classrooms of 2 floors below. One day as we were leaving the class, I left earlier than everyone, and I missed out on my friends bumping into a seemingly weird student. And as they turned around, they were spooked, for the student was nowhere to be seen. Imagine a corridor at the 4th floor, all doors locked and only way off the floors by the stairs of both corners. They were quite far from the other staircase, and for the student to just disappear so fast, he had to at least be sprinting to do so. But no footsteps were heard, and no sign of the student anywhere else. My friends described the student as a male with a normal uniform and all, except his hair was a little wet, and he looked pale and gray. We always leave the class together after that. Next up is stupidity at its finest. A close friend of mine has a younger sister in the same school, and she told me the details of what happened outside of school. The younger sister and her bunch of friends was quite known to be naughty and causing havoc here and there. One day they broke into a locked classroom in the supposedly mostly haunted building and started playing around, mocking spirits and ghosts, and also trying to making fake talismans and sticking them on the walls and on their foreheads. Most of them went home spooked by something that they wouldn't say, and all of them end up with a high fever and nightmares. My friend and her family had to bring her to the temple and ask the monks to help as the younger sister was clearly being haunted, with weird things happening in the house like things falling off on their own or going missing. What is worrisome was a knife went missing and reappear in one of their rooms. Since then, the younger sister has to refrain from speaking about paranormal things ever again. By my 4th year, a new rumor of the bloody hand in the toilet also started, and most girls were terrified to use that particular toilet. As you may have guessed, it's also located at the corner of the classrooms from the above incident. Reports of bloody handprints and creepy sightings continue, but nothing was done, and slowly girls stopped going there. Till this day, it's unsure if it was a prank or if it was real. On my 5th year, I transferred to a different state and lost touch with most of my friends there. And basically, that's all I know thus far. There were so many more rumors, but most of them were basically sightings of ladies and Japanese soldiers roaming the school, and my 5th year in the other school was quite uneventful. True story. Something called my name. So Friday night, I was staying in an apartment my family had been renovating in a town over from where I normally reside. I've done this countless times as most of my friends are in the aforementioned town. So the clock has just struck 1 a.m. I'm texting my girlfriend to come over and spend the night with me, and bring illicit substances for us to indulge in. As I send her the text message, I hear someone familiar yell from what sounded like outside or inside, a very muffled yell. "Nathan!" My name. I responded confused. "Hmm?" And the voice responds, "Come here!" in a stern and somewhat friendly voice. So I arm myself, exit the building, and look around for whoever may have yelled for me. This apartment is inside a barn in a quiet neighborhood, so it's not a complex, and I wasn't the only one inside. Or rather, I was the only one inside the property. I look around and see no one and nothing in sight. I check the apartment, under the stairs, the walls inside the apartment. Not one thing. I call out for the voice again, but get no response. I know what I heard. Could it have been a homeless person who heard my name when friends were leaving? Possibly, most likely. Could it have been paranormal? I'd give it the same likelihood as the first option. Just want to get everyone's opinion about it. I've always wanted to share this and would love your guys' thoughts. Has anyone else ever felt like they were visited by family or loved ones before they passed? When I was in junior high, my grandmother was on her deathbed, and we all knew her time was coming eventually. My memory's fuzzy on her health, but if I can recall correctly, she had gone through a bit of a fit and was recovering and fell gravely ill again. The night before she passed away, I had the most vivid, surreal dream. I was at the base of the stairway, surrounded by light and clouds, and there was my grandmother, as happy as could be, smiling, asking me to help her up. As a younger kid, I always wanted to walk around and just help her upstairs and even her chairs. And so, of course, I took her hand, and we went chatting and talking. Can't remember about what, but I just know it was good and I was happy, because I never got to spend that much time with her, and always made me resent my cousins who did, even though they weren't her grandchildren the same way I was. But here she was, walking with me, surrounded by beautiful views, the most calming light, while climbing the softest steps I'd ever set my feet on. Now, we got really high up, and we stopped and she told me, "This is it. The rest is for me. You can't come yet. Thank you for helping me. I love you." And I looked at her. I didn't say anything other than goodbye, and I woke up feeling so refreshed. My heart was so full, and the sunlight coming through my window felt so different and brighter than any other morning I've ever had in my life so far, that it really felt like I spent that time with her. Even as I finished typing this, tears are running down my cheeks. My brother picked me up from school that day, and he told me she'd passed. All I could think was, I know, I walked her up to heaven last night. I'd love to hear if you guys have had similar experiences. I think it'd be really cool and therapeutic for me to read through. Farewell. I was 6 years old. It was a normal Saturday evening, as I wished my mom and dad a good night and went to bed. At this time, my grandpa was everything to me. Some of my earliest childhood memories, like feeding ducks or going hiking, are with him. Anyway, light went out, door got closed, and I grabbed my Game Boy Advance to play some Tetris as usual. The hour hit 11 or 12, and I closed my eyes. Ordinarily, I'm a heavy sleeper. A rattle or even shouting wouldn't wake me up. This night I woke up, eyes closed. I felt like no way it was already morning. Thinking, should I keep my eyes closed so I can sleep again? Nope, I opened my eyes. You know the image you have when you first look at a sun and you close your eyes and there's this white and yellow bright blur that fades slowly away? A white blurry figure is floating over me. I just stare at it and recognized a face, mumbling, "Grandpa?" As I couldn't keep the stare and I blinked, gone. Rearranging my thoughts, realizing what it would mean if what I saw was what I saw. Can't be. No. Looked at the time, 2:30 a.m., rolled around, slept until 8. I woke up and heard my parents up and active in the flat. Heading out of my room, my father just said that something happened. Grandpa died this night. He passed away peacefully in his sleep at around 2 or 4 a.m. I still don't know if she was real or not. When I was a kid, I was walking to school early in the morning. School wasn't far from home, and it was only a 6-minute walk. Usually those 6 minutes would fly by, and I would be well on my way to class with no struggle. As you can expect, all this would change on a particular uneasy morning. I would pass my friend's house and look over to her neighbor's front door. I keep my eyes fixed on that door as I slowed down walking. A female figure would appear blurry from inside the house, running to the door, becoming more clear. She was in a white nightgown and was obviously terrified, scared out of her mind, trying to escape. Her dark brown eyes, long brunette hair, and pale skin still vivid in my mind. She's screaming, "Help me!" all while our eyes are fixed on each other's. She started crying. She kept screaming, "Help me and get me out of here." She starts banging on the door, which, mind you, was glass, with her fisted hand. It was loud, excruciatingly loud. And I start crying as I keep slowly walking up the street. I look around to see why people haven't come out of their houses to the loud banging and screaming, and I'm confused. I was terrified. I look back and she starts fading away. Like when I lost eye contact with her, I broke off all connections. I felt a heartbreaking pain in my chest, and the same pain has stuck with me ever since that day. It's been 16 years since. 3 years later, I'm in high school, and in the same class as my friend, who still lives next to the same house where I saw this girl. I ask her about her neighbor and his name, and she replies with no issue at all. I didn't want, but an itching feeling in my heart told me to ask, so, "Does he have a wife or kids?" I ask directly. My friend looks at me confused, and she says, "No." My heart sunk, and I felt uneasy. My mind thought of potential answers. A kidnapping? Did he kidnap her and no one knows? How long has she been stuck there? Why couldn't anyone hear her banging and screaming? I reply back to my friend, "Oh, weird. I swear I saw a girl inside at the front door." I laugh it off. My friend looks uneasy. I change the subject to ease the atmosphere. It's been 16 years, and to this day I'm terrified of walking past that house. I still hear her screams and banging. I still don't know if she was real or not. Should I return? Is a question I ask myself every day. Night shift at the hospital. I work as a nurse at a hospital in the UK that was initially constructed during World War II and was supposed to be a temporary facility. However, that was not the case, and it was further built upon and still remains as a slightly modernized building. I recall doing a night shift during the wintertime and had a patient admitted to us with an infection, but otherwise had no illnesses that could affect their cognitive function, i.e. dementia or learning difficulties, etc. At around 2 or 3 a.m., said patient began to scream from the side room that they were placed in. Myself and another nurse responded. Once in the room, I tried to defuse the situation and calm the patient down. All the while, the patient was screaming about how a man with a bag over his head had been stood at the corner of the bed, just watching her. As we entered the room, I could tell something was off and felt a shift in the energy, despite myself telling the patient that there was nothing to be concerned about. Once settled, myself and the other nurse that came with me had turned to leave the room and witnessed what I can only describe as a shadowy figure pass through a set of double doors outside the side room in which the patient resided. The doors are behind a bit of an alcove, so you can't see them from the side room, but once you leave the room, you can see them. After a few seconds, both myself and the responding nurse clicked on to the fact that the double doors are always locked and have to be unlocked with keys. The time it took for us seeing the figure to pass through that area and how long it would take to unlock said doors, pass through them, and lock them again from the other side would be near to impossible. Therefore, we both came to the conclusion that it was a ghost or an entity of some sort, and returned to the desk somewhat unnerved. The hospital I work at has its fair share of ghost stories, and this one is one of the 3 experiences that I've personally had during my 5-year stay with this hospital in particular. I was advised to post this here after posting the ghost story sub. Hopefully you guys can help. To preface, I live in a small town that was founded in the 1850s as a railroad town. as it's exactly 100 between Columbus and Pittsburgh, and at the time steam engines needed to stop every 100 miles to refill with water. I live on the main street, directly across from the field that the tracks run through. Just down the street from the old rail depot, now a museum, and my house was built in the 1860s by the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. My dogs have always hated my dining room since I bought the house 6 years ago. They won't lay out there, and never linger in there long while moving through the house. I've never thought anything of it. I always assumed it was because of the linoleum floor. Recently, within the past few months, they've started barking at the walls in the dining room in the evening. Again, I just assumed it was because of the shadows. The paint in there is a high gloss, and it's a light hue, because it's a large room with a single light source and always feels dark, so at night, the light can cast some pretty epic shadows. Well, the week before last, my mastiff charged into one of the walls while growling, and I finally paid attention to what he was barking at. I went out to the dining room and watched a shadow very clearly move from one end of the wall to the other while my dog was bashing himself off the wall. I decided to just let whatever it was go on about its business because it's never bothered me before. Fast forward to today. While I haven't seen the moving shadow again, my dining room fan's light fixture blew 10 brand new bulbs last week. Every light I put in has stopped working within a few hours. Had an electrician here today that looked it over and used a multimeter on it. Said it's in perfect condition. I don't think I was supposed to see it, and now it's mad at me. Or maybe it's mad at the dog. I have no idea what it even is. I just know I have a very dark dining room and my dogs refuse to enter it at all. Being as my front door leads to my living room and the dining room, and then the dining room branches off into the kitchen, the basement, the upstairs steps, and the bathroom, my dogs have been stuck in the living room for a week and they're not budging, even if I bribe them with treats. I've considered asking it to leave, but as a pagan, I know well enough that some things take any direct communication as an invitation. If my little house ghost isn't just a little house ghost, I'd prefer to not extend an invitation and feed its energy. What is in my house? What really happened to me that night? Context that may be important to answer the question. This was 1.5 years ago when I was 20. I was in college and had my own apartment in a super old building in a city. Having to pay for an apartment while schooling caused me to have 2 jobs on top of everything else. So I was understandably under a lot of stress. Since the building was old, there very well could have been some weird mold or carbon monoxide that I couldn't see affecting this experience too. Nothing out of the ordinary has happened to me since, but nonetheless, let's get to the story. I was heading back home into my apartment. I was driving by myself on the highway, with my boyfriend in his own car following behind me. It was pouring as I was driving and slightly dark. Visibility wasn't great. As young, reckless people do, we were racing a little bit on our way home, and I was in the lead. I got near this bend in the highway with an overpass above it. On either side of me were concrete rail guards, and just ahead in the road was a puddle. I was going approximately 120 to 130 kilometers an hour, which is like 75 to 80. As I approached this bend in the road, I was hit with an overwhelming sense of fear. I immediately slowed down to below the speed limit and all was fine. Immediately after this, though, my boyfriend calls me. I answer the phone and he's freaking out. He's crying, telling me to slow down. I said I already did because I had a weird feeling and asked him why he wanted to tell me that. From his perspective, I was driving around the bend and didn't slow down. When I hit the puddle, I hydroplaned, and he saw my headlights go toward the concrete rail guard to my left. Then, in an instant, I was straightened out again like it had never happened at all. Both of us remembered this experience in detail. Although we got home and talked about it, we chalked it down to a weird coincidence, maybe too much stress. But was it a coincidence? I felt real fear. He felt real panic and grief. At the same instant. Haven't really thought about it a whole lot since then. Except when I'm speeding and it's raining. I always slow down now. Until recently when I was watching a documentary that described someone else experiencing something similar. I won't go into detail about the documentary itself because I don't want my bias or any of my readers to have this, but I'm just not sure anymore if it was a coincidence, a hallucination, or something even weirder. Strong feeling that someone is with me. This occurred some 40 years ago, but now that I think about it, I still remember vividly the experience. It was a lazy weekend morning, and I was alone in my apartment. At some point, I decided to take a shower. Soon after jumping into the shower, a very strong feeling came over me that I wasn't alone. The feeling was so strong that I had to get out of the shower and look around. No one was there, but the feeling remained that I wasn't alone. There's only one way into the apartment, and that's through the front door, which is still securely locked from the inside. The feeling was so strong that I decided that I needed to do a little thorough search of the apartment, and I proceeded to look in all of the closets, in the cabinets, and under the bed. Nothing. After assuring myself that there's no one in the apartment, I returned to finish my shower. But soon again, the feeling returned. Once again, I had to search the apartment. I just knew someone was there with me, but no one was there. I forced myself to quickly finish the shower and get dressed. By this time, the feeling was gone. I thought to myself, that was weird, but didn't think too much more of it. About an hour later, a very good friend shows up at my apartment. He looks very panicked, and not at all his usual self. All he said is we need to go. He wouldn't tell me where or why. After we're in the car and he's driving, does he tell me what's going on? A good mutual friend of ours had attempted suicide about an hour before, and I turned just white as the news. I couldn't believe it. The good news is our friend survived. After he recovered, I told him about my experience. My friend couldn't offer any additional details as he has no memory of the experience after he OD'd. I'd like to think that my friend was reaching out for help. I've never had this experience before, and in the 40 years since, it's never happened again. Belchertown State School Experience, Massachusetts. This took place in the fall of 2016 when I was 15. My friend had told me about this abandoned state school for the feeble-minded in Belchertown. He said he'd gone before and it was super cool inside. It has a huge auditorium and many halls with graffiti sprayed everywhere. We all thought it'd be a fun idea to visit together. You're not supposed to go in, and we were trespassing. And it was full of asbestos, but we didn't care, stupid 15-year-olds. For context, there was 4 of us in total. 2 were my friends and 1 was a friend's girlfriend. We all got into one of my friend's cars and took the hour-and-a-half drive to get there. When we got there, we entered the building and was immediately sort of just uneasy. It was very creepy. Everything was decrepit. There was graffiti and garbage all over the walls, upside-down crosses, you name it. I decided to take some pictures to see if I'd maybe pick up some orbs, even though I didn't know this place was haunted. I figured with its history it could be. So I started taking photos, and one of these photos had a huge orb flying around. It could have been dust or asbestos particles, but it stood out in the photo. After we explored for a while, we decided to head to a different section of the state school. We left and started walking outside again. Eventually, we came to this section that sloped downhill and had a big smokestack on top of the roof area. This night was a full moon, and I was the last one walking in our line. I decided to turn around as the moon was just above the slope that we'd come down. When I looked back, I swore I'd seen the silhouette of a person at the top of the slope, standing in front of the moonlit background. But when I looked again, there was nothing there. Now, this could have been my mind playing tricks on me, but what comes next was definitely real. Me and my friends decided to stand around and be as quiet as possible to see if we could hear anything outside. Being fall, there were piles of leaves all over the ground. We stood in silence for maybe 10 seconds, when all of a sudden, no more than 5 feet away from us, where we could visibly see there was nobody there, big, heavy footsteps started dragging through the piles of leaves, very slowly and deliberately coming towards us before stopping. We all looked at each other and my friend Dan said, "Did you guys hear that?" We were all in shock. We all started giggling like bitches and started running back to the car as fast as we could, in terror and excitement. My rented house in Delhi is haunted. I rented a flat in New Delhi. I've been living here for about 10 months, and I find myself to be extremely at home in this house. It's a 2 BHK. I don't know what that means as the narrator. And I share the other room and a common area with 2 other people. We've all found this house to be extremely positive, except the past 2 months. Weird things have been happening. First, the north side of the house where my room and common area is, the vibe started feeling really dull. All plants in this area started dying. My fish started behaving really weird. It would get really restless and run around its bowl like a crazy thing, and 4 to 5 times then would fall flat like it's dead and suffer. But then it'll kind of get okay in a few seconds. She did this for like 4 days, and then her behavior just changed. Hasn't been the same since. A plant in my room didn't dry up yellow, it shriveled up and turned completely black and died. In the last 2 months, all of us developed a severe headache problem and backache problems. A friend who comes to visit also said last month they've been getting headaches off every time that she comes to my house. And maybe it's getting too suffocating in here, but we've always had a very well-ventilated house. Anyway, we washed all the windows and mesh doors and kept windows open because these couple of months the house has started to feel stuffy and still. I've never complained about living in my house, but as of late I started saying that I wanted to move out. Maybe because this room gets to me, and it's too dull. I hate being in this room. I got more lights and shit, but it just felt too dark and felt too unsettled. But I've honestly loved being anywhere more than here before in the last 2 months. Anyway, we didn't think any of this could be paranormal. Our landlady who owns this floor and the top floor of this building has come late last month and complained about the top floor becoming too negative, and her son, who lived on the top floor with a tenant, had been experiencing weird, unnatural shit in his room, which is right above my room. But we never made any connection and never took her seriously. We always defended her house and said the ground floor, our house, is really positive and you shouldn't worry. Last week, during a full moon, both ACs on that floor stopped working altogether. And something else unnatural also happened, which the landlady refuses to disclose. She got scared and called a pandit, a Hindu priest, to do a puja, a worship, on the floor in the room where her son lived, above my room. The pandit performed a hawan, a ritual where offerings are made into a consecrated fire in the room, and then he kept the hawan kund, it's a metal structure in which the fire is lit, neatly on the side. The room was then locked and no one slept there. The tenant slept in his own room in the south on the same floor. Next morning, the landlady's son came and opened the room, and he found that the Hewankund had been placed at the center of the room, and another ritual had been performed there. The room was a mess, with the tube light being broken. The bedsheet on which the pandit had sat to perform the Hawan had been half burnt in a pile. There was haldi, which is turmeric, and some red powder and liquid that looked like blood, which wasn't blood, but spread everywhere on the floor. There was haldi on the walls and the cupboards. However, nobody heard anything, saw anything, or smelt anything, or felt anything. The tenant who was sleeping in the other room claimed that he felt nothing happen and vacated the house the same morning and left for good. I got a call from the landlady when they found the room in the state and just went upstairs to them. I went to the room and I felt my heart sink when I entered the house. The vibe in the house was the same as in the room where somebody had died. I felt it. I went to the room and took photos of what I found. This left the owner's family really traumatized, so I got her in touch with a person I know who practices occult science. He came and first told the landlady the entire history of the land that the building is built upon, and the history of her family, which all checked out. Then he claimed that in the 1970s, a girl of about 24 killed herself in some part of the land, which was later sold off. The AC that's not working has a hole in the gas pipe, with nail marks. The holes check out. And one of my flatmates claimed to hear anklet sounds a few nights ago. But he said she's not trying to cause trouble. There are other energies with her that have been trying to create disturbance and problems since the last 51 to 53 days. We hadn't said anything to him about the vibe being off the past 2 months, but when he gave that specific timeline, it matched. He then said you all might be experiencing headaches and back pains, might be falling sick, and we all said yes to that. Even the landlady who lives 5 kilometers away said that I saw a neurologist for my headaches there past few weeks. She'd been taking 4 aspirins a day sometimes. It was the same with me. I had visited a hospital 10 days ago for my headaches, but it was nothing, and I tried everything, and they just wouldn't stop. All of us had the same complaint, but we only connected the dots that day. The person said the spirits need some work done. I'll do my job. They won't trouble you. So he did whatever. Only the landlady, her son, and I performed the rituals with him. The last part of the ritual, which has to be done the next day, he asked me to do, and then he left. He asked me to come meet him afterwards, after I had done the last part of the ritual, so I saw him 2 days later. He said it was a risky job, so he had to cleanse my aura after all this. When I saw him, he said, "You might have had difficulty sleeping," which was true for both of my flatmates, as both those days they just kept complaining that they aren't getting any sleep. I, however, slept just too much both of those days. Too much. The landlady called him a while after that and said that she can't sleep and it's been 2 days. So he told all of us that I was going to tell you this only. You'll have trouble sleeping, it'll be okay, give it time. But I told him I'm sleeping very well and a lot, and he just laughed and said, "Of course you are." He cleansed my aura and I'm back home. I've been sleeping well, but something else is off. Since the day he came and we did all those rituals, I'm feeling agitated and restless, tumultuous in the heart. Also, my clothes have been turning yellow. I have a bruise on my thigh, which is also sort of yellow. The narrator can't help but mention that Delhi is incredibly humid, and it sounds like from those headaches you're dealing with some form of mold. That's only because I dealt with that too. On to the next story. The Scared Old Man. When I was a kid, I used to love having sleepovers at my uncle's house, my dad's brother. It was so much fun because me and my brothers would stay up late playing games and talking with our cousins Nick and Julie. Since I was the oldest after we were done playing, I would have to go to the guest room, which was in the same hallway as my cousin Julie's room. It was a long hallway to get to her room. I would always get upset about doing this because I'd just rather everybody stay with everyone else, but there wasn't enough room for me there. One early morning after a sleepover, I woke up because I felt like somebody was watching me. When I opened my eyes, there was no one there. Since I was awake, I couldn't fall back asleep. I figured I'd go to my cousin's room and see if they were awake. My 2 brothers and my 2 cousins were sound asleep. Being the little shit that I was, I grabbed a water gun and slightly sprayed water on them, then ran back to the guest room and jumped into the bed laughing my ass off. I did that one more time and they didn't wake up. Since they weren't waking up the second time I did it, I stopped being funny, so I decided to do it one more time, and I was determined to keep on spraying them with water until somebody would just wake up. As I was spraying them, my cousin moved a little and went back to being funny. I ran through the hallway laughing, thinking I was so hilarious. When I jumped to the bed and I was in midair, I realized there was somebody on the bed. It was an old man, laying in bed covered in the sheets. His face showed a lot of fear. It was like he was more afraid of me than I was of him. He was pulling the sheets up to his neck. The moment I hit the bed and felt a body, I jumped back off like a cat on water and ran to my aunt and uncle's room. I was hysterical. I said, "There's an old man in the guest room." My uncle saw the fear in me, so he believed me and went to the room to check it out. As you can probably guess, there was nobody there. They get pissed at me because I woke everybody up early in a horrible scare. I told my brother and cousins what I had been witnessing, and they thought I was pulling off a joke on them. My cousin Nick didn't say a word. He would always sleep with his sister in his room, and the guest room was originally Nick's. He never admitted to seeing anything in that room. However, I think that old man was the reason why he would always sleep in his little sister's room. The weird thing about this whole thing is that the old man seemed genuinely scared of me. Maybe he thought I was the ghost and he was the live one. We'll never know. Snap out of it. That's the title. This took place on January of 2015 in the US. A little bit of backstory. I had known my roommate Alex for 3 years at the time of the event. We met through a mutual friend that figured I could use a Hispanic roommate when I moved to the States to go to college, because I'm too much of a Spanish speaker. I always thought he was rather odd and possibly homosexual, but that never bugged me, considering that I have several homosexual family members. Alex never spoke about his sexuality near me. In fact, I had every reason to believe that he was homosexual because of the way that he talked, dressed, and behaved overall. The thing that always struck me as weird is the fact that he would constantly make fun of homosexuals. After some time, my brother Jacob and I got extremely surprised when he had introduced us to his new girlfriend, Kelly. I remember saying, "Wow, I guess he's not gay after all," to my brother as a joke. Kelly seemed nice and all, but she didn't live in town. So Alex and Kelly were having a long-distance relationship and always spent their free time on Skype talking. After some time, my brother and I realized that Alex was coming home quite late. My brother then assumed that Alex was cheating on Kelly because he noticed that Alex would come back rather exhausted, wearing his shirts inside out. It was none of our business, so we kept our theories to ourselves. One day, Kelly came to visit. While she was visiting, she discovered that Alex had a dating site on his phone. She also realized that the dating site was for homosexuals, and he had several messages that talked about some sexual encounters that he had been happening in the past. She also came to realize that he was on Craigslist looking for one-night stands with men. Kelly was beyond furious with him and made him write a public apology on Facebook. Alex was a graduate student and had many of his colleagues, teachers, and even his advisors on Facebook. Everybody knew what he had done. Alex was devastated. He wasn't really talking to Jacob or me after the incident. Some weeks went by and he finally was getting a little bit better. He was also financially broke and still in really bad shape. I noticed that he stopped eating. He was only drinking coffee and reading the Bible. I apologize for the long backstory, but I think it's necessary for this story to make sense. Now to the date of the incident. I went to school that day and I had plans to go eat with my girlfriend after. When we met to go eat, I had a weird feeling that I needed to go home. I didn't know why, but one thing was certain at the time, and that was that I had to cancel my lunch plans and go back home. My girlfriend thought it was weird, but she said, okay. When I arrived home, I noticed that Alex was sitting in the living room, basically staring at nothing. I attempted to start a conversation with him. I said, Alex, are you okay? I've noticed that you've been really stressed lately. Want to talk about it? But he didn't answer. It was like Alex didn't even acknowledge that I was in the room with him. So I said, well, I guess I'll leave you to your thoughts. I went upstairs to the bathroom. When I was done with my business, I heard some screaming and yelling coming from downstairs. I remember saying out loud, what the fuck? I was slowly making my way downstairs when I started hearing growling, followed by laughter, followed by growling again. It was weird. When I got downstairs, I saw Alex on the floor of the living room twisting his body like he was in pain. I remember asking, Alex, what's wrong? Are you hurt? He didn't answer. He just kept on screaming and laughing. I was in shock. What in the actual fuck is going on here? I remember screaming at him, snap out of it. The room felt cold, really cold. He kept twisting his body like as if he was having an epileptic seizure. At one point he stopped, then he looked at me. His eyes were completely rolled back, so all I could see was white, and in a demonic voice in perfect English he said, "It's the devil." I froze. Alex was also from a Hispanic-speaking country, so he had a very thick accent. How could he possibly be speaking in perfect English? After saying that, he started speaking a weird language. It was like if he was speaking backwards. He kept twisting his body around, and now his tongue was moving like a snake, like the little girl from The Exorcist. I didn't know exactly what to do. I thought of recording it, but I was too scared to do so. I went outside the house and saw my neighbor. I told him what was happening, and I even opened the door so that he could see what Alex was doing. All he said to me was, "I'm sorry, bro, I'm late for class. Good luck." Thanks for nothing, I thought to myself. I called a friend of Alex whom was a pastor. Let's call him Daniel. I knew Daniel because him and his wife would invite us to dinner every once in a while. I haven't spoken to him for at least a year because Alex suddenly stopped talking to them. I remember saying, "Daniel, I know we haven't talked in a really long time, and this is going to sound really, really crazy, but Alex is laying in my living room, claiming that he's the devil." Daniel's reply went a little like this. "No, it doesn't sound that weird. I've dealt with similar situations in my life. I'm on my way." When I went back into the house, my heart dropped. Alex was laying face up, holding a butcher knife against his stomach. He was still moving his tongue. My first thought was to take the knife away from him, but then I figured that he was unstable. A swing with that knife could end my life if I attempt to get close. I went back outside to call Daniel again. I said, "Daniel, Alex is just holding a knife against himself. What do I do?" He said, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't want you to get hurt, bud. Just wait for me outside. I'm almost there." When Daniel arrived, I showed him the best way to Alex. When we got into the house, I couldn't believe my eyes. I yelled, "Daniel, should I call 911? It took Daniel a little longer to acknowledge what was happening. There he was, my roommate, laying on the floor. pulling his own intestines out of his goddamn body. There was blood all over the floor. He just kept pulling them out. Daniel told me to go outside, call 911 immediately, so I did. I probably sounded like a complete lunatic to the dispatch operator when I explained everything to her. She said that an ambulance and cops were on their way and asked me to tell them exactly what I had told her. When I went back inside, Daniel had stopped Alex from pulling his intestines out of his body. He started praying to him. He said, "I demand to speak to Alex in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ." But all we got back from Alex was the weird language he was speaking and growling. When the paramedics arrived, they started working on Alex and realized that he was completely out of it. They kept telling Alex to hold on and that everything was going to be okay. Alex lost consciousness, if you could call it that. They immediately took him to urgent care. My girlfriend called and I said that I couldn't talk at the moment. I told her with very short details what was happening and hung up. The cops then questioned me and Daniel. They asked me if there were any drugs or alcohol in the house, if Alex was on medication, things like that. They questioned me repeatedly. Different cops asked me to tell them what happened. They even made me write it down. This sucked because I was still trying to process what I had witnessed. However, as cops, it's their job to be suspicious. Making me repeat my statement is a technique to see if I would change the story. Jacob arrived shortly after the police questioned him too. When they were questioning Daniel, he told them that he could assure them I had nothing to do with Alex's injuries. Even after all the questioning, the police took me into custody thinking I was responsible for what Alex did. After hours at the police station, they finally let me go. Daniel picked me up at the station and then took me to the hospital to see how Alex was doing. We arrived at the hospital, and they told us that I was in really bad shape, and he was still in surgery. I was able to see him for a few hours after that. He held my hand and apologized. He was barely awake. Daniel then took me back to the house. We kept discussing what happened and told me that Alex was possessed by an evil demon. That's why he was able to speak in a different language and do what he did. I told him that I was afraid of staying at that house, so he agreed to have another pastor help him bless the house. When we arrived, Jacob had already taken care of the blood. He told me that the cops took the knife as evidence. Good thing I didn't touch the knife. My girlfriend was there to comfort me and try to calm me down. My adrenaline was still going crazy. She said that she would stay the night with me and make me feel better. To be honest, I couldn't thank her enough for that. Not everyone would be willing to stay at that house after shit like that. I was afraid that the same thing was going to happen to her in the middle of the night. Weeks later, I learned that she was thinking the same thing about me, and that she was extremely scared of staying with me that night. My girlfriend and I went to bed. I fell asleep quite quickly because I had a really traumatic day. Unfortunately, my dream was a continuation of the very same day. In my dream, I decided that I didn't want to stay at that house after that shit with Alex. So, my girlfriend and I ended up going to a hotel. At the hotel, still in my dream, I remember asking my girlfriend, how can somebody be in such bad shape that would allow themselves for the dark to take over their bodies? Shortly after, we went to bed. I was basically asleep in my dream when I heard a knocking on the door. I looked at the clock, and it was 7:03. I said, "Fuck it. I'm so tired after what I went through that I'm just gonna ignore it." Then I thought it could be news about Alex, so I got up and looked through the peephole. All I could see was an empty hallway, when suddenly out of nothing, I saw a creature running insanely fast towards the door, hitting it very hard and laughing at the moment of impact. The creature looked like the demon from Insidious or Darth Maul, a black and red face. I backed away and I kept hearing laughter. I got so mad after that I punched the door right back. After punching the door, I heard the creature laugh again, and then it said, "Well played." I woke up right after. I've always wondered if the creature I saw in my dream was the same creature that took over Alex's body. Alex barely survived the incident. He spent 2 months in the hospital because of severe internal damage. I had to go to therapy for a very long time because of what happened. I couldn't drink, smoke weed at my own house because I would dream about Alex standing up with his intestines out, screaming while staring at me. When Alex got better, he spent some time to get his stuff out of the house. He was too embarrassed to stay or even pick them himself. And I really didn't want to see him after everything that happened. This had been probably the worst experience of my life. The cops that I talked to said that I did exactly what I should have done in that situation. They said that without any medical attention, Alex would have been dead in minutes. They also told me that that was probably one of the weirdest incidents they had ever worked ever. My girlfriend and I believed that thanks to that strange sensation I had of urgently having to go home instead of going out to lunch with her, Alex is still alive today.